السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. والعصر إن الإنسان لفي خسر إلا الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر. رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي. فالحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيد الأنبياء والمرسلين وعلى آله وصحبه ومن استنى بسنته إلى يوم الدين. اللهم اجعلنا منهم ومن الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر. آمين يا رب العالمين. ثم أما بعد. Once again, everybody, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh. I'd like to start today by thanking all of you for joining me in this venture. Surah Al Asr is, to me, people ask me all the time what my favorite surah is, and at the time, whatever I'm studying is my answer. So, but overall, I would have to say that the surah that's impacted me the most is, in fact, Surah Al Asr, and impacted my study of the Quran. So I do have a special relationship with it. I'm grateful for all of you that are here physically and those of you that are watching online that have participated over the last few days, and those of you that haven't caught up on previous sessions or got some good sleep during those sessions. I hope that you go back and, even if you do it little by little, I think it's important to at least have one study of the surah, and inshallah continue your own reading and commentaries, a study of commentaries of the surah. It's, I think, incumbent on every Muslim to take some time to at least give that much due to this particular surah, and that's, in keeping with the legacy of the first generation of Muslims who took the surah very seriously, reviewed it with each other all the time, every time that they met one another. The other thing that I'd like to tell you is that this is not an isolated set of lectures. It's part of a series. My project is actually to try to go through the entire Quran in somewhat of a deeper commentary than I've done before. And that project should, in my estimation, take me about 9 years, inshallah, if Allah wills. Much of Juz Amma has been completed. This is where we are on Surah Al Asr, and I have to finish the rest of this too. And outside of Juz Amma, I think there's about 20 surahs that have been completed, including Surah Al Baqarah. Last Ramadan we wrapped up Surah Al Baqarah also. Or the Ramadan before last. So what I'm hoping that those of you that found this beneficial and are interested in keeping with me and keeping up with me in whatever I'm studying and teaching, that you will participate and take advantage of the other surahs that have already been recorded. Quite a bit of work has already been done, and all of that's available on bayina.tv. So if you inshallah ta'ala take advantage of that resource, and the hope is that if Allah gives life and ability, and of course if Allah, and we pray that Allah Azza wa Jalla grants sincerity and ability, that I'm able to complete a full commentary with the help of my colleagues. And while I'm at it, I also want to say that this is not an individual effort, and I don't just mean, of course, our talented staff that's putting together these live casts and the program and all of that, but additionally there's a team of researchers that help conduct this study and work with me and help me go through a lot of these questions, and it's the compilation of all of our notes, and at the end I have to kind of go through that, sift through that, and figure out how do I teach this in a way that's not overburdening, and inshallah you can retain some of these things. So I'd like to thank all of them for this project also, and I'd ask you guys to make dua, those of you that are watching online, to make dua not just for myself and family, but also for the colleagues and the people that are helping make this possible, and we pray that Allah rewards those that are learning and those that are teaching as part of the case made in our favor on Judgment Day. So in any case, I'm going to pick up from where I left off. We're at the last ayah of Surah Al Asr, إِلَّا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَعَمِلُوا الصَّالِحَاتِ وَتَوَاصَوْا بِالْحَقِّ وَتَوَاصَوْا بِالصَّبْرِ, with the exception of those who believed and did good deeds. I'm oversimplifying translation right now. With the exception of those who believed and did good deeds, counseled one another to the truth and counseled one another to perseverance or to patience. In that, we talked the last time about faith, those who believed and those who did good deeds. We kind of elaborated those two things together just a little bit. Now I want to take a concluding comment on those two things and then move on. يقترن العمل الصالح بالإيمان في القرآن الكريم نحو 75 مرة مع الوعد والبشرى. The Quran actually mentions faith and good deeds together about 75 times. So the connection between faith and doing good is actually a very strong one across the entire Quran. And as it's mentioned, what comes with it is al-wa'ad, meaning Allah has promised people like that success. Wal-bushra, He mentions good news for them. بِأَنَّ مَنْ يَعْمَلَ صَالِحًا وَهُوَ مُؤْمِنٌ فَلَا يَخَافُ ظُلْمًا وَلَا هَضْمًا. That someone who can do good deeds while holding on to their faith, that kind of a person's never going to be afraid of being wronged, nor are they ever going to be, all their deeds are going to be absorbed. La wala kufrana li sa'ihi, Quran will tell us that the efforts that they made will never be denied them. That even if you didn't achieve results, the fact that you made efforts is actually something Allah will acknowledge in and of itself. I like to remind, especially students that are studying Islam or Arabic or Quran or things like that, it may be that you don't know how to pronounce Quran properly, and you're trying to learn how to do that, and everybody else in class got way ahead of you and you're way behind. You can't get the ayn out of your system. You're still saying a'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim, and you can't say a'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim, and it's gone 6 months and you're still like a'udhu, 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 and your shaykh is just plucking his hair out going a'udhu, and you're saying a'udhu. It's just not working for you, but you're trying, and nobody else sees results except Allah, because to Allah the effort is the result. And so those efforts, even if nobody else saw results for them, are in fact rewarded with Allah. وَلَا كُفْرَانَ لِسَعْيِهِ وَلَهُ جَزَاءً الْحُسْنَى. And by the way, on that note, I also wanted to mention people, even Muslims, can be very cruel. So they may not acknowledge things that you do. Like people, being appreciated is really, really hard. And for some reason, for Muslims, it's really hard to appreciate others. Very easy to criticize though, but really hard to appreciate. It's kind of a thing we have, right? That's the only thing we have ijma' on, I think, in this ummah right now, right? Hard for us to appreciate, very easy for us to criticize, right? To find fault in another, etc. But just because you do efforts, like, you volunteered at a masjid or something, or helped out somewhere, and nobody thanked you, nobody acknowledged your efforts, nobody came up and, kind of appreciated you, and you feel like, well, I'm not wanted here, I'm never going to do this again. Well, that's just the thing. Maybe Allah surrounded you with unappreciative people to make sure that you are clear to yourself, you never do this so that you're acknowledged by people, even though it feels good. And even though that's not a bad thing. The Prophet ﷺ would acknowledge people all the time. It's a sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ to acknowledge people, the efforts they make. That doesn't mess up their intentions. Like, some of us have this we're more religious than Islam itself. So we have this thing, you shouldn't appreciate someone or praise somebody because it'll go to their head and their intentions are going to get messed up, or they're going to, and somebody says, mashallah, good job to you, and you're like, astaghfirullah, I only do this for Allah. No. Like, chill out, dude. The Prophet ﷺ would praise, for example, the zuhud. Abu Dhar Ghifari, he'd praise his zuhud, he'd praise his spirituality. Like, of all the things that if he's super spiritual, then you should be really uncomfortable that you're praising his spirituality. Like, no, I'm not a spiritual person, I'm a nobody. And he said, if anybody wants to see the spirituality of Jesus, they should look at him. That's what he said, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, about him, right? So that's a remarkable thing to say. But the idea is acknowledging others is actually a sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. But on the other hand, if you're on the not so receiving end of it, you're doing stuff and it just never gets acknowledged. You do things for your family, it doesn't get acknowledged. You do things for your in-laws, it doesn't get acknowledged. You do things for friends and it doesn't get acknowledged. You did things for them all these years and none of it got acknowledged, as though you've done nothing for them. If that happens to you, doesn't matter, whatever you did, Allah will never let any of that go to waste. وَلَا كُفْرَانَ لِسَعْيِهِ وَلَهُ جَزَاءً الْحُسْنَى وَحَيَاةٌ طَيِّبَةٌ. And such a person is going to have the most beautiful compensation that they can't even imagine. It's the superlative use, the most beautiful, and is going to be given a good life. May Allah grant us all a good life. And of course, what Bint Shati, I'm taking this straight out of Bint Shati's work, who's a genius when it comes to the study of the Quran, and what she does, what I really appreciate about her work, is that when she'll take a phrase in a surah of the Quran, she'll survey the entire Quran and see how does Allah use this phrase everywhere, and summarize it and say, well, here's how Allah talks about this. And she did that with الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَعَمِلُوا الصَّالِحَاتِ, like faith and good deeds. And she says, well, overall, here's how Allah talks about people who have faith and try to do good things. Here's what it is in one short paragraph. وَالَّذِينَ يُؤْمِنُونَ بِاللَّهِ وَيَعْبُدُونَ الصَّالِحَاتِ وَقَلِيلٌ مَا هُمْ. And so she's going to combine all of Allah's different commentaries from different places in one phrase. So I'll translate that for you. Those who believe in Allah and do good things, do the few good things asked of them, and how few they are, لَا خَوْفٌ عَلَيْهِمْ وَلَا هُمْ يَحْزَنُونَ. They're not going to have fear hovering over them, nor are they going to be the ones riddled with grief. لَهُمُ الدَّرَجَاتُ الْعُلَى. They're going to have the highest of ranks. وَلَهُمْ أَجْرُهُمْ عِنْدَ رَبِّهِمْ. And they're going to have compensation that's their own, waiting for them with their master. وَلَهُمْ أَجْرٌ كَرِيمٌ عَظِيمٌ كَبِيرٌ غَيْرُ مَمْنُونَ. And they're going to have noble compensation, meaning they'll be dignified as they're being given compensation. They're going to have a grand compensation, a massive compensation, one that will never be discontinued, a reward and an acknowledgement that will never go away. وَلَهُمْ مَغْفِرَةٌ وَرِزْقٌ كَرِيمٌ. And they're going to have forgiveness, they're going to have dignified provision, meaning their housing, their clothing, their food, all of it is going to be like an award ceremony for them. وَرِزْقٌ كَرِيمٌ وَلَا يَسْتَخْلِفَنَّهُمْ فِي الْأَرْضِ. And Allah will actually give them, He will establish them in the land, and He will leave them behind to take care of the earth. You know, Allah describes in some places that at the end of it all, it's only the يَرِثُهَا عِبَادِيَ الصَّالِحُونَ. The earth shall be inherited by my righteous slaves. So Allah will promise them eventual, victory in the land. وَيَزِيدُهُم مِّن فَضْلِهِ. And Allah will enhance them even from His own favor. وَسَيَجْعَلُ لَهُمُ الرَّحْمَنُ وُدًّا. One of my favorite benefits of being from this group of people, Allah will put Ar-Rahman, meaning the most loving, caring one, will place for them, place for them in the hearts of others intense love. Like Allah will make others love you. And that they won't even know where that love came from. It's not from them, Allah put that in their hearts. They will make dua for you, they will feel a softness towards you. And Allah sometimes does that even in the hearts of enemies of Allah. Allah put a love of Musa in the heart of Fir'aun. So this وَأَلْقَيْتُ عَلَيْكَ مَحَبَّةً مِّنِّي. I cast onto you a special love that comes from me. Meaning anybody who saw you just fell in love with you. Allah here says, سَيَجْعَلُ لَهُمُ الرَّحْمَنُ وُدًّا وَهُمْ خَيْرُ الْبَرِيَّةِ. And these are the best of all creatures. وَأَصْحَابُ الْجَنَّةِ وَطُوبَى لَهُمْ وَحُسْنُ مَآبٍ. And these are the best of all creatures. These are the people of heaven. Congratulations to them, طُوبَى لَهُمْ, and the best to them, وَحُسْنَ مَآبٍ. And what an amazing place to go back to. It's also interesting that in the Quran you find the opposite of faith is two things. The opposite of iman is either shirk or it's kufr. Right? The opposite of iman is either people who believe and people who do shirk, or people who believe versus people who disbelieve. So it's either the mu'minun, on the opposite end it's either al-mushrikun or al-kafirun. Those are the two groups. But what's really remarkable about these deeds is that in a couple of places in the Quran, the opposite of shirk is actually people who do good deeds. Instead of being people who believe, it's people who do good deeds. Which is Allah's way of saying that believing and doing good things are interchangeable and one side of or two sides of the same coin. So Allah says, for example, فَلْيَعْمَلْ عَمَلًا صَالِحًا وَلَا يُشْرِكْ بِعِبَادَةِ رَبِّهِ أَحَدًا. He should do good deeds, he should act righteously, and not do shirk. Where we were expecting Allah to say he should believe in Allah and not do shirk, He says he should act righteously and not do shirk, as if the opposite of shirk is what? Al-amal al-salih. Because al-amal al-salih is actually directly, it's literally the other side of the same coin of faith itself. To Allah, good deeds are not some separate entity, they're actually a manifestation of faith itself. An interesting other place about just the connection between faith and deeds, Allah says, فَلَا صَدَّقَ وَلَا صَلَّى. He didn't accept the truth. He didn't confirm the truth, nor did he pray. Meaning, to Allah, the proof that he didn't accept the truth, meaning he didn't believe, is that he didn't pray. وَلَكِنْ كَذَّبَ وَتَوَلَّى. In fact, he called it a lie and turned his back, meaning turned his back from the prayer. Similarly, Allah will say call the prayer. The Muslims used to pray towards Jerusalem, and then Allah changed the direction towards Mecca. And when He changed the direction towards Mecca, the Jewish community in Medina started making fun of some of the Muslims and said, "Oh, so all the other prayers you were praying towards the wrong address? You had the wrong GPS directions? Your app was, just malfunctioning?" I'm really skeptical about those apps, by the way. I was at the Haram, and I pulled out my Qibla app, and it was pointing in the other direction. So I was like, But anyway, they made fun of them. You're praying towards, all those prayers, you were praying in the wrong direction. They didn't count. And Allah Azza wa Jalla says, about Himself, that لَن يُضِيعَ إِيمَانَكُمْ. Allah will not let your faith go to waste. The conversation wasn't about the faith going to waste. The conversation was about prayers, deeds going to waste. But Allah called it your faith going to waste. So to Allah, our deeds are actually the manifestation of our faith itself. They're not two separate things. By the way, that connection between those two is for Allah, not for people. I remind you, when we talk about things from the Quran, we're talking about how Allah judges things, not how you and I judge others. If anything, these formula that I'm sharing with you are there for you to judge who? Yourself. Nobody else. Somebody else doesn't pray, you don't say, oh, well, Quran says faith in action, you kafir. No, you don't, no. That's not what Allah gave us license to do. That is not what Allah gave us license to do. This, there's the legal side of it, and there's the spiritual side of it. And the spiritual side is only for our own selves. Similarly, Allah says, وَمَنْ كَفَرَ فَعَلَيْهِ كُفْرُهُ. Whoever were to disbelieve, then the liability of disbelief is only going to hurt them. وَمَنْ عَمِلَ صَالِحًا فَلِأَنفُسِهِمْ. And whoever does good things, then it's for their own benefit. Wait, what's being contrasted? Disbelief with good deeds, as opposed to disbelief versus belief. Like, قُلِ الْحَقُّ مِنْ رَبِّكُمْ فَمَنْ شَاءَ فَلْيُؤْمِنْ وَمَنْ شَاءَ فَلْيَكْفُرْ. Like, it's usually belief, disbelief, shirk, or belief. But here you have, if you want to disbelieve, then that's going to hurt you, nobody else. And if you want to do good deeds, it's only going to benefit you. وَمَنْ عَمِلَ صَالِحًا فَلِأَنفُسِهِمْ يَمْهَدُونَ. They're only extending a good road for themselves. So that's one of the other things I wanted to highlight to you before we start today with وَتَوَاصَوْا بِالْحَقِّ and وَتَوَاصَوْا بِالصَّبْرِ, is as if Allah, when He says الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَعَمِلُوا الصَّالِحَاتِ, He's actually describing the inner and the outer of the same thing. This how they say, this fruit is from that tree. They're byproduct. It's a byproduct, necessarily a byproduct. And that's what this is. By the end of the surah, inshallah, I'll share the logical connection between them, not just the textual one. Like, this is how Allah describes the textual relationship between these things, but even it's common sense. And we'll see that at the end, inshallah. Now there's a transition. The last two phrases of the surah. وَتَوَاصَوْا بِالْحَقِّ وَتَوَاصَوْا بِالصَّبْرِ. And I'm simply translating those for now. They counseled one another to the truth, and they counseled one another to patience. That's the final phrasing, those two mini phrases in this ayah. The first thing I'd like for all of us to acknowledge is the transition that's happened here. What's happened is, somebody believes. Where is their belief? In their heart. If they're on an island by themselves, can they do good deeds? Sure, they can pray, they can eat halal, they can be grateful, and they can do those things, and they can still do good deeds. What I'm saying is, to a great extent, faith and good deeds are individual concerns. They're up to me. And they reform myself. Yes, Allah mentioned them in the plural, that it strengthens together, that's implied, but essentially, at the end of the day, my faith is mine and yours is yours. My deed is, لَنَا أَعْمَالُنَا وَلَكُمْ أَعْمَالُكُمْ. We have our deeds, you have yours. I can only be responsible for what I do. Now, there's a switch in these two phrases from something that never be done individually. Like Iman, you can have individually. Amal salih, good deeds, you can have individually. You don't need anybody else to do something good. You can do it on your own. But وَتَوَاصَوْا بِالْحَقِّ وَتَوَاصَوْا بِالصَّبْرِ is actually necessarily involving other people. You can't do it alone. There's no such thing. The word tawasi comes from tafa'ul, and tafa'ul in the Arabic language, that family, that pattern of the Arabic language suggests more than one party cooperating with each other. Half of this ayah is about you working with others to do something. What we're learning then is Allah says all humanity is in trouble. إِنَّ الْإِنسَانَ لَفِي خُسْرٍ. All humanity is drowning in loss. And the only way to save yourself is not just, at least I'm good, and at least I do some good things. You can't just stop there. Because that would have been, إِنَّ الْإِنسَانَ لَفِي خُسْرٍ إِلَّا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَعَمِلُوا الصَّالِحَاتِ. And that's it. But He says, إِلَّا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَعَمِلُوا الصَّالِحَاتِ, which is for yourself. Then He says, وَتَوَاصَوْا بِالْحَقِّ وَتَوَاصَوْا بِالصَّبْرِ, which is for others. Which means unless you have a concern for others, you and I aren't even saving ourselves. Listen to that again. We're still in loss if we're only concerned with ourselves and we are unconcerned with others. If that doesn't bother us, then we still haven't saved ourselves. He made that a condition. That's a very powerful reality. Bint Shati mentions this and says, وَوَاضِحٌ هُنَا أَنَّ عَلَى الْإِنسَانِ مَسْئُولِيَّتَهُ فَرْدًا بِالْإِيمَانِ وَعَمَلِ الصَّالِحَاتِ وَمَسْئُولِيَّتَهُ عَنِ الْجَمَاعَةِ بِالتَّوَاصِي بِالْحَقِّ وَالتَّوَاصِي بِالصَّبْرِ. She says it's abundantly clear that a human being is responsible individually towards faith and good deeds, and collectively towards counseling one another. That's what the phrase says, counseling one another to the truth. You can't say one another if there's not more than one person involved. And counseling one another towards patience. That can't be the case unless there's a collectivity. Now we get into one phrase at a time before we wrap the entire surah together. The first phrase will be وَتَوَاصَوْا بِالْحَقِّ, counseling one another to the truth. And both of these words deserve attention. It's just two phrases, tawasi and haqq, right? Those are the two main words, counseling and truth. So we'll dig into the Arabic of them so we understand some insights about these words and then put them together and try to understand the lessons that can be drawn from them. Well, so I'm talking about counsel first, wasiya or wassa, واو صاد and ياء. والأصل اللغوي للمادة يعطي معنى قوة الارتباط والاتصال فالوساط والوصية جريدة النخل يحزم بها ووسط الأرض اتصل نباتها ومنه جاءت الوصية فيما يعهد به الموصي ليصل إلى من ينبغي أن يتلقاه أوصاه وعهد إليه. Now let me summarize all of that for you. The root letters of this word, counsel, actually have to do with something being held together securely. This is why the word wasiya was originally used for a rope, for palm trees. They scrape off the rope that they can use to tie things and stuff. And they used it for construction to hold things together and secure them. That's actually called wasiya also. Wasat al-ard is used when the earth has plants that are very difficult to pull off. So ittasala nabatuha. They remain connected, they don't come off. And that's actually the word wasiya. The word is also used for leaving a will. So when somebody's about to die, they're leaving a will, that's called a wasiya. And serious advice that one must hold on to. Advice, just casual advice, relax, take a break, casual advice, But then there's very serious advice. Somebody sits you down and gives you very serious counsel, which is essentially what inheritance is, right? It's very serious advice. This property goes to this one, this goes here, that goes there. Or parting words, or somebody's will is being read, or somebody's farewell, final letter is being read. Upon my death, please read this letter. That's serious stuff. That's when it's called wasiya, meaning people who hear it are bonded to those words. The word wasiya also suggests it's not something you give up on easily. Meaning this counsel, first of all, it's a very serious matter, and when you share it with somebody, you don't just share it casually. You take the matter very, very seriously for yourself. Okay? So these are embedded inside the meaning of tawasi. The other interesting thing about tawasi is when they say tawasa al-qawm bi-amrin awsa bihi awwaluhum akhirahum. When they say a group of people are doing tawasi, which is the word used in the ayah, it means that they are giving that kind of important, realistic, very serious advice to one another. Not only is the giver a giver of advice, they're also the recipient of advice. That's an essential meaning of the word. Watawasaw doesn't mean they give advice. It actually means they are as eager to give as they are to take. That's actually what makes it tawasi. Otherwise, it would have been وَأَوْصَوْا بِالْحَقِّ وَأَوْصَوْا بِالصَّبْرِ. They gave counsel. I keep translating is they counsel one another. What does that mean? Sometimes A is counseling B, other times B is counseling A. What happens often is that, especially in the name of Islam, we call this amr bil ma'ruf and nahi anil munkar, commonly translated commanding the good and forbidding the evil. Some people get really high on that, especially Muslim youth who know a little bit about Islam off of YouTube videos and have taken some notes and decided to become, carriers of amr bil ma'ruf and nahi anil munkar, can become very condescending to people in their da'wah or the way they carry themselves on college campuses, and act like they know all of it and nobody else knows, and put people down, and not always in the mood to give advice, never in the mood to take advice. Never in the mood to take advice. I could finish giving a khutbah and somebody can come up to me and say, by the way, you quoted this ayah, but I disagree with what you said about it. I've learned something else about it and I think you're wrong. And my advice to you is to fix that. Now, there could be a bunch of things that are going on in my head. Do you realize I'm on YouTube? I mean, you're going to correct me. How many hits do you have? Or I could sit down and say, I think you're right. I didn't think I realized. As a matter of fact, even if he's wrong, my attitude before I hear him out should not be one of, oh, here we go again. Somebody's trying to correct me. That shouldn't be the case. Nothing is superior to the word of Allah. And if I came genuinely to learn this book as a humble student, that means I am prone to error. I will do whatever I can to learn it to the best of my ability, but that does not mean that I'm beyond error. I have to maintain my attitude towards this Quran always, first and foremost, as a student, and in some limited capacity as a teacher, in a very limited capacity. So even when it comes to religion often, and I've seen this happen with my own eyes, I've seen people that teach religion that I looked up to, that people came and asked them a question and they got offended. How dare you ask? Who are you to ask? Who are you to give me criticism? Who are you to give me advice? You know, this shouldn't be the case. And it shouldn't be the case across the board in anything. But the idea of tawasi is you're just as eager to give, genuinely give serious advice, and at the same time to receive. Also embedded within it, which will be reinforced by the word haqq, but since it's on my mind, I'll share it with you now. This does not mean you give advice on every little thing, that you critique and nitpick every little thing. This is only the attitude that we must take on for serious issues, like life and death kinds of issues, big matters in the religion. You know, in the religion there are fundamentals, and then there's additional things, extra things. And sometimes people are so obsessed with the extra things, they make that into the religion. And what happens with the next generation is, all they see is those extra things were emphasized. That's all they know about the religion. They don't even know what the fundamentals of the religion are. They just know the periphery and the outside and kind of the decorative items of the religion. And they're even annoyed with them. That's a serious violation of tawasi. Just tawasi. We're not even bil haqq yet. What tawasaw is only counsel given to one another on serious, important issues. Study the word wasiyah in the Quran, awsa, you'll find fundamental matters. It's either actually literally wasiyah used for, inheritance itself at the time of somebody's death, or it's things like awsani bisalati wa zakati, that Allah counseled me and Allah gave me the counsel to pray and to give zakat. Fundamental matters, essential things. And in essential things we do advise one another. But now we get to the word haqq, one of the most powerful terms in the Quran. Its root being used well over 200 times across the entire Quran in many, many ways. First, I'll share some things about its etymology, and then inshallah we'll connect these two phrases together, or these two words together. العربية قد استعملته حسيا في الطعنة لا زيغ فيها والمحقق من الثياب المحكم النسيج والحق من الإبل الذي اشتد واستحق أن يركب. Arabic roots often have a visual image associated with them, even though they're abstract and essentially. The word haqq means truth, which is an abstract thing. But the Arabs had some visual imagery associated with the same origin, and so that's what I'll share with you first. They use it for at-ta'na la zayga fiha. They use it for a cut or a slice that's direct and straight. There's no when you're cutting cloth or whatever, the line goes sideways, but if it's perfectly straight, that's actually called haqq also. It's also muhaqqaq is used for clothes that are perfectly stitched, and there's no loose stitching anywhere. Al-muhkam, al-nasij. Al-hiq is used for a camel that is strong enough now, it's mature, it's perfect, and it's now ready to be ridden. In other words, it's met its purpose. You spent money on this camel, and you finally allowed it to grow and to get to a certain age. And it's hard for you to relate to camels. I know you don't have a camel, probably. I'll tell you, I was in Muscat not too long ago. I was in a Quran program, and our ustad, he mentioned, man lahu jamal. There's like 300 people in the audience, and he's like, who has a camel? Everybody raised their hand except me, and I felt like, wow, I'm not in America anymore. But yeah, old Arabic examples are about camels, right? So the idea is somebody invested in their camel, let it grow, and now it's finally perfectly ready to be taken on a ride for long durations on a long haul in the desert. That's actually also called hiq. Now what does that mean in the figurative sense? How did that word then become truth? Actually the word haqq means a number of things, and those of you the three of you that are taking notes, you should write this down. The first thing that haqq means is reality, or an undeniable truth. Reality or an undeniable truth. That's the first meaning of haqq. The second meaning of haqq is actually purpose. خَلَقَ السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضَ بِالْحَقِّ. He created the skies and the earth with purpose. Okay, so the first one was truth, reality. The second one is purpose. Now go back. Think about each one as I describe it. They counsel one another to what? Truth, reality. You give someone advice, you need to be real with them. You can't sugarcoat the truth to them. You might say, if I tell them what it really is, their feelings might get hurt. If I tell them they're being unjust to their children, or unfair to their mother, or not right in the matters of inheritance, or they're swindling money, or they're lying about these business transactions, or they're not giving somebody the money they deserve, etc., etc. If I call them out in that way, then that's going to be offensive to them. No, first and foremost, you can't sugarcoat the truth. What it is what it is, and you have to be real about it. The second thing is they counsel one another to purpose. وَتَوَاصَوْا بِالْحَقِّ, to purpose. There are people around us who are capable of much more, and often they lose sight of their purpose. And it's important for us to take whatever opportunity we can find to give them heartfelt counsel so they can find their purpose yet again. أَفَحَسِبْتُمْ أَنَّمَا خَلَقْنَاكُمْ عَبَثًا. Have you assumed that we just made you and you can just roam around free and do whatever? You have no purpose? No, actually, everything else was made with purpose, so were you. So the idea of actually taking a young man who's like addicted to video games and does nothing else with his life, or taking somebody who's become depressed and says, I don't want to do anything, and to actually take your time to counsel them and to help them find their way back towards purpose again, to pull them in a better direction again. This is part of the meaning of وَتَوَاصَوْا بِالْحَقِّ. By the way, what I didn't mention is part of the meaning of wasiyah. When somebody leaves a will, do they leave it for people who they love or who they hate? They love. And sometimes it's not just percentages of income, it's, as I die, I want to remind you that I love you, do this, this, and this, and, I forgive all the bad things you ever did, etc., etc. And somebody's at the hospital bed, they're about to die, their last words, their loved ones are listening, crying, they'll never forget those last words. The idea of using that word is that this advice that's being given, even if you're being real with somebody, you're sharing the raw, ugly truth with somebody, you are not to use anything but the most loving, compassionate tone. That's what you're supposed to be using. And because that's what wasiyah is by definition. So you can't just say, by the way, what you're doing, you're going to burn in hell. Why would you say that? Well, because Quran says, وَتَوَاصَوْا بِالْحَقِّ, Amr bil Ma'ruf, baby, that's what I just did. No, you didn't. That's not وَتَوَاصَوْا بِالْحَقِّ. That is not how that's done. It's done with love. It's done out of concern. It's done thinking about their future. That's what wasiyah is. You're concerned about somebody's well-being in the future. So that's the second meaning of haqq. The third meaning of haqq is actually to deserve something, or to have the right to something, rightfulness. حَقَّ عَلَيْهِمُ الْعَذَابِ, that the punishment was justified on them. Or وَالَّذِينَ فِي أَمْوَالِهِمْ حَقٌّ مَعْلُومٌ لِلسَّائِلِ وَالْمَحْرُومِ. Those who have هُمْ فِي أَمْوَالِهِمْ حَقٌّ مَعْلُومٌ. Those people who have a portion of their money is a known haqq for people who might ask, or people that have been deprived. In other words, part of our money is supposed to go to charity. That part is a haqq for somebody else, is a right of somebody else. They counsel one another about what? Rights. They counsel one another about rights. Meaning you're not giving your mother her right. You're not giving your friend his right. You're not giving your fellow Muslim his right. They counsel, and by the way, they don't just counsel one another about others' rights. They also often counsel them about their own rights. Because sometimes somebody is, deprived. Somebody's wronged. Somebody thinks lesser of themselves, and you have to remind them that they are worth more. They have more rights than that. That Allah has dignified them, so they shouldn't humiliate themselves. It's both. You use the word haqq to remind people of their responsibilities to others, and also what they are owed. This is part of the meaning of وَتَوَاصَوْا بِالْحَقِّ. We have to let parents know what their rights are. But we also have to let the parents know what their responsibilities are. It's part of tawasi bil-haqq. We have to know, business partners have to know what their rights are and their responsibilities are. That's within tawasi bil-haqq. And that implication comes out of that third meaning, rightfulness. Then of course, haqq also means justice. Like the Quran says, يَهْدُونَ بِالْحَقِّ وَهُمْ يَعْدِلُونَ. Haqq. They guide people by haqq, and by it they do justice. قَالَ رَبِّ احْكُمْ بِالْحَقِّ. He said to Allah, Master, make a verdict with haqq. Meaning, how do you make a verdict? Using justice. So haqq, in the sense that Allah used the truth and used justice to pass your verdict. فَاحْكُمْ بَيْنَنَا بِالْحَقِّ وَاللَّهُ يَقْضِي بِالْحَقِّ. Make a verdict between us, pass a final judgment between us using the haqq. Allah passes His verdicts using haqq. When Dawood alayhi salam was a qadi, when he was a judge, what does Allah say to him? Ya Dawood, inna ja'alnaka khalifatan fil ardi fahkum bayna an-nasi bil haqq wa la tattabi'il hawa fayudillaka an sabilillah. Dawood, we have made you a khalifa on the earth, judge between people using haqq. They counsel one another now to the fourth thing. The first thing was reality. We're real with people when we give them counsel. We don't do mujamala. We don't tell them what they want to hear. We don't sugarcoat the truth. Understand this one thing, by the way. The Prophet ﷺ was the softest, kindest, nicest, most gentle human being in history. Right? Like people who were rough around the edges, like the people of Makkah, used to only have good words for him. And yet, he's the nicest, and that never changed. And yet, he's sharing the Quran with his society. And the Quran is not sugarcoating nothing. So you have the softest man ever, sometimes describing the harshest realities ever. Which means the way you deliver must remain soft. But what you deliver must remain genuine and true. You understand? Those two things are separate. What we do is we confuse those two things. So what we do instead is, no, we don't want to talk about that because somebody's feelings might be hurt. No, feelings might be hurt by the way you say it. But you cannot worry about feelings being hurt in regards to what you have to say. The truth is the truth is the truth. وَتَوَاصَوْا بِالْحَقِّ. You can't get away from it. And you're not even doing it for somebody else. This is your effort and my effort to save ourselves. So these four implications of haqq must be kept in mind. Counseling people to the truth, counseling people to purpose in ourselves, counseling each other to our rights, counseling one another towards justice, fairness. And fairness is not only a matter of sharia and of fatawa. Fairness is in everything. Fairness is in how you dealt with somebody. Fairness is how you spoke to somebody. Fairness is how I looked at somebody. Fairness can be the most subtle things. But and the companions of the Prophet ﷺ had really like a sharp lens when it came to fairness. They were really, really careful about that. Right? So in some cases you had companions bringing verdicts in cases to one of the companions and saying, can you we have a disagreement with this non-Muslim. And I say, hey friend, sit down, let's do this. And he says, no, you can't judge between us, you just called me friend. So you're already partial. We're not doing this. Because there's already a bias. You already like me. You can't be a fair judge. You know? So the idea of impartiality and really looking at justice with a sensitive lens, that's what tawasaw bil haqq also. Okay. Now, the first thing I've already shared with you is that it must be mutual. Let me take a few other steps. There are two things that are being highlighted here. What is it that we're doing tawasi to? What are we doing counsel to? And how are we doing that counsel? So there's the what and there's the how. The beautiful thing about the letter ba in the Arabic language, وَتَوَاصَوْا بِالْحَقِّ, is that the ba can be used to answer the question what, and it can also be used to answer the question how. So the ayah is multidimensional because it's saying multiple things in that one phrase. So in terms of what, we know that we're counseling each other to fairness, to rights, to reality, to the truth. I already told you this is about serious things, so this is not that sister sections. You see some woman with nail polish and say your wudu is not accepted and your salah is not. That's not tawasi bil haqq. That's not purpose, that's not the truth, that's not reality. No, easy. There are bigger things that are tawasi bil haqq. How do you learn what really is tawasi bil haqq and what isn't? Study Quran, you'll find out. What is the Quran emphasizing? What is it highlighting? And it doesn't just highlight what you should emphasize, it highlights how you talk to people. How do you bring something up when something is wrong? I would be okay with somebody praying, and somebody's praying here, and they prayed a little fast. And I go up to them and say, hey, that was too fast, do it again. That was no good. In my mind, I would first say, this person, maybe this is the first time they're in a masjid in like a year. How would I know? And the fact that they're here is a pretty good thing. And if the only thing they ever got here when they got here was you prayed too fast. Your sajda was like a hit and run. Like a bird pecking on the ground or something. I mean, what was that? Subhana Rabbiyal A'la? Really? How fast can you say that? Subhanallah? You know, what did you just do? If they hear that, will they ever come back here again? Nope. That's not tawasi. You want to correct somebody, but wait, you want to see, that may be a symptom of a much larger problem. And maybe this is not the time to say it and the right place to say it and the right way to say it. That's the thing about wasiyah, right? It's at a very specific time. And so you find the right time, place, opportunity, choose the right words, and then share those things. And share them in a loving, compassionate kind of way. Our Quran's interest is not in changing people, changing people's behavior. Allah keeps telling His Prophet ﷺ, "Lasta alayhim bimusaytir." You're not in charge of them. You're not in charge of people. You can't change them. All you can do is remind them. That's all you can do is remind. فَذَكِّرْ إِنَّ فَعَتِ الذِّكْرَى فَذَكِّرْ إِنَّمَا أَنْتَ مُذَكِّرْ. Musa alayhi salam wasn't told, convince Fir'aun. He wasn't told that. Argue with him, defeat him in argument and convince him. Nope. قُولَ لَهُ قَوْلًا لَيِّنًا. Both of you go, speak to him nicely. Speak to the Pharaoh nicely. Kills the mass murderer of babies, calls himself God. Speak to him softly. لَعَلَّهُ يَذَّكَّرُ وَيَخْشَى. Maybe he'll become a good person. That's not up to you though. Your job is just to speak calmly with him. This is part of tawasi bil haqq. This is how we have to understand it. We can't have this aggressive, unfair, and actually very anti-Quranic view of what it means to do amr bil ma'roof and just insult another Muslim and say, by the way, your beard is haram, or your clothes, or your this, or your that. What? Where did that come from? What kind of amr bil ma'roof is this? What kind of tawasi bil haqq is this? That's a joke. Now that's a mockery of what the deen actually says. This was not the way of the Prophets, alayhimus salatu wassalam. Anyhow, then I told you it's what they counsel to. I highlighted those 4 things. But there's also a how do you counsel. Allah says, وَتَوَاصَوْا بِالْحَقِّ. That bil haqq can also mean how do you engage in counsel. You engage in counsel fairly. You're fair when you're giving advice. You think through it and you're fair. And you're justified in giving advice. You're rightful in giving advice. You're honest in giving. You have honesty in giving advice. So the nature in which you do it, you come across as honest and you are genuinely honest. You find the right time and place to do it. You find the right words to do it. This is all part of the how captured inside the word haqq. Now, فَإِذَا أَخَذْتَ الْحَقِّ بِالْمَعْنَى الْعَامِ الْوَسِيعِ كَانَ مَحْبُوبًا لِلْعَقْلِ وَالْقَلْبِ مَعًا وَاشْتَمَلَ الْعِلْمِ وَالْعَمَلِ جَمِيعًا. If you were to think about the word haqq, it becomes something. The counsel becomes something that will be loved by the mind and the heart together. This is what Hamiduddin Farahi says. Remember yesterday I told you there are 4 items. Each of them you have to look at with 2 lenses. The lens of the mind and the lens of the heart. We looked at Iman like that. We didn't quite look at deeds so much like that, but it is. Legally, as far as your mind's concerned, you have to pray 5 times, you're convinced. But the heart of the prayer is something else. Right? So our deeds have to have the outside and they have to have the inside. They're both necessary. When it comes to counseling somebody, you can give arguments, rational proofs, evidences, quote the Quran, quote the Prophet ﷺ, show them the hadith is sahih, show them the fatwa of a alim, whatever. What are you doing? You've got some haqq. But there's another dimension to that haqq, which has to do with your heart, the way in which you counseled. And so, if you truly embody haqq, then it's not just the opposite of falsehood. يعني كان ضدا للباطل والجور والفساد فاعلم أن ملاك النجاة إصلاح القوى العقلية والأخلاقية وأن للعقل والقلب كليهما جانبين من اللين والشدة. That's the thing. It's a two-edged sword. The truth is harsh, isn't it? And Allah is saying these people are going to say the harsh truth, but they're going to say it in a super loving way. So you're going to say something that, yeah, it may not be easy to hear. And yet at the same time, you've got to say it in a way that softens the blow and is still loving and caring. You know? That's the balance we have to strike. I say this and I never get tired of saying it because it's one of our biggest problems. Allah gets angry in the Quran because He has the right to. You and I don't have the right to. Even if we're quoting an ayah in which Allah is angry, I'm not supposed to get angry. That's not my place. I give you the analogy over and over so it sits in your head. If I'm yelling at one of my kids, why did you do that? Why did you do that? And one of my little ones comes over, yeah, why did you do it? What? Who are you to get angry? I'm the one who has the right to get angry. I'm the authority here. Why are you acting like you're in charge? Well, I'm quoting you. You can't just quote me and assume my authority. If we get offended by that with our kid, imagine when we take Allah's kalam and assume His anger and His authority when we speak. That's not our place. And that's within the meanings of haqq. Anyhow, so on the one side, tawasi bil haqq also means that when you do give counsel, you don't just give emotional counsel. You know, you should do this. Why should I do it? Because Islam says, where does it say? Don't talk too much. You should have haqq with you. Like if you're from where I come from, if you ask further questions, you might get, don't be batamiz. Show some respect. Watch yourself. No, I just want to know where it came from. Did the Prophet say? Yeah, he did. Where? You be quiet. If you're going to give counsel, then you better have the truth with you. You better know where that came from. And maybe in the course of giving counsel, you realize that your counsel is wrong. It's possible that you came to give counsel and you ended up in the course of that very conversation becoming the recipient of counsel. You shouldn't be giving this advice because it's not good. And at that point, if your ego sparks and my ego sparks and we say, what? I came to give you advice, you trying to give me? Forget it. I'm out of here. These people, man, they don't even listen. Then you don't understand what tawasi means. At any given moment, you and I are able to acknowledge we're wrong. And any given moment, the one that we were advising turns around and starts giving us advice. It certainly can happen. The tables can turn very easily. Allah turns these tables for Musa alayhi salam. Musa alayhi salam was traveling. You know the story at the end of Surah Al Kahf. He was traveling, and his student, the young man who was with him, fell asleep. And he got upset with him. And not too much later, Musa alayhi salam himself is a student. And he makes slips. And his teacher gets upset with him. He was on the giving end, and he immediately became on the receiving end. SubhanAllah. That happens. The teacher becomes the student. Sometimes the student becomes the teacher. It may happen. So this is yarhamukallah. So when I say tawasi bil haqq, then from the spiritual sense, it's also a sense of responsibility. We have to instill in people haqq, meaning we have to remind them that they are responsible, that Allah is going to hold them to account, or that they can't just get away with doing things the way they're doing. And we all have to be this way. And by the way, the last thing I'll share with you that is a kind of an implication, kind of ishara from the ayat. When you give somebody advice, especially personal advice, the word tawasi makes it seem like we're both in need of advice, the giver and the receiver. So when you're giving advice and you start saying you, then it sounds like what? I'm already good, you need to get up to speed, right? So it's so much better received when you use the word tawasi in its true spirit and say we or I. You know, I was thinking when I get angry, I do this. I was thinking when I have a problem, I do this. You don't even make it about the other. You make it about who? Yourself. Like the Prophet himself, the advisor to humanity would say, Usikum wa nafsi bi taqwallah. I counsel you and I counsel myself to the taqwa of Allah. So the really soft, beautiful way of giving somebody advice is not making them feel like you're talking down to them. You make it sound like you're talking about yourself. Or you're talking even to yourself. And that's far better than you and I, being condescending towards somebody else. So that's kind of a phrasing of wa tawasaw bil haqq. And this is something that applies at the level of family, friends. There's tawasi bil haqq in your immediate circle. There's tawasi bil haqq in a larger sense in society, in community and society. There's tawasi bil haqq in the media. Somebody gets called to do a media interview on behalf of Islam, they have to do tawasi bil haqq. There are levels of it. But we're not all responsible for this at the same level. Tawasaw bil haqq is not just about da'wah to non-Muslims. It's actually something actively that you and I participate in every single day with the human beings that are around us. And so before I go on to tawasaw bil sabr, I want to share with you the importance of the application of these ayat. The Quran uses two words, and the Arabic language has two words, alam and dunya. Alam means the world. Alam is the world. Allah did not make you responsible for the whole world. We have to give the planet haqq. Chill out. You live in this neighborhood and you work at that grocery store, or you have this job, or you go to this community college or whatever. You have a limited circle. What did He make you responsible for? Not your alam, but your dunya. What does your dunya mean? Not the world, but your world. Your friends, your family, your colleagues, your social circle, your neighborhood, your community. There's a limited circle, and the closest people to you first. وَأَنذِرْ عَشِيرَتَكَ الْأَقْرَبِينَ. And then on, and then on, and then on. The Prophet ﷺ would send people of the same tribe to those tribes. Because that's where they belong. That's their world. That's their world. So as you learn about this is not about we're going to write articles and books and papers. That may come later on. That's one of its levels. But the first level is actually within those that are closest to us. Those that are part of our life on a daily basis. And you'll see, without having to look very far, that there's a great need of tawasi bil haqq. Within our own circles. Among our own friends, within our own extended families. There is a need. Somebody needs to call it out. Some uncle's being oppressive. Some in-law's doing something wrong, and nobody says anything because we're all scared. We don't know his temper, man. Last Eid, you know what happened with him. So you don't say anything. Well, somebody's got to do tawasi bil haqq. We've got to find some soft, gentle way of speaking the truth without holding back and standing up for justice. And speaking out for our rights and other people's rights. That has to happen. This is the reality of this matter, meaning this immediately applies and you're not even doing it for somebody else. Keep that in mind. We're doing all of this, Allah says, because if you don't do it, you're in loss. Forget if they change or not, or things get better or not. You're not even doing it for that. You're just doing it to save yourself, according to this ayah. It's a fundamental requirement of your faith. So with that, we go on to وَتَوَاصَوْا بِالصَّبْرِ, the final phrase of this ayah. They counsel one another to patience. Patience is probably the most common translation. Some also use the word perseverance for sabr. I wanted to share some of the origins of the word first, so we get a deeper look at the Arabic of it. This is the last vocabulary word of the surah. وَاعْلَمْ أَنَّ الصَّبْرَ عِنْدَ الْعَرَبِ لَيْسَ مِنَ التَّذَلُّلِ فِي شَيْءٍ كَمَا يَصْبِرُ المضطهد العاجز بل هو أصل القوة والعزم وكثر في كلام العرب استعماله بهذا المعنى. Ancient Arabic and in poetry, sabr or patience was not used to describe the weak. It was always used to describe the strong. Someone capable of retaliating, someone capable of fighting back, someone capable of taking revenge, someone capable of striking back or talking back or whatever, and they still held themselves back. This person has sabr. That's sabr. You know what we've turned this into? Somebody's being abused, somebody's being insulted, somebody's being cornered, and then they say, I don't know what to do, all I can do is what? All I can do is sabr. See, even in the case of Yaqub alayhi salam, they took his son, left him in the woods, told the sons came back and said a wolf ate him, and he said, Sabrun Jameel. It's not because he's helpless. He could beat those guys up. He could say, you monkeys are going to take me back, and you're going to show me what you did with him. He could. He already knows they're lying. He knows they're lying. Wallahu al-musta'an ala ma tasifun is clear. He knows they're lying. He's choosing sabr, which is an elaborate story. Why did he choose sabr? Even though he has the power to retaliate. Quran also says, وَلَمَنْ صَبَرَ وَغَفَرَ. Whoever had sabr and forgave. Hold on a second. You can't be on the receiving end like the cops have wrongfully arrested somebody, somewhere in Pakistan or Egypt or Syria, somewhere, and they're beating this guy up and he says, I forgive these cops. You're not in a position to forgive. You're getting beat up. You can forgive them in your heart. But if you were in court, they were on trial, you had the right to ask for retribution, and then you forgave, that you're not in a position of weakness anymore, you're in a position of power. When it comes to dealings with each other, sabr is actually when you have the power to retaliate. With Allah, when there's a circumstance like sickness, calamity, death in the family, war, when there are situations that are above you, and you are actually humbled and weakened, that's another kind of sabr in the Quran. Don't confuse those two kinds of sabr. One sabr is overwhelming situations in which you have no power. There's an army that came and ran over you, destroyed your home, or a car hit you and you're in the hospital for 6 months. You have no choice but what? Sabr. الَّذِينَ إِذَا أَصَابَتْهُمْ مُصِيبَةٌ قَالُوا إِنَّا لِلَّهِ وَإِنَّا إِلَيْهِ رَاجِعُونَ. Who are these people? وَبَشِّرِ الصَّابِرِينَ الَّذِينَ إِذَا أَصَابَتْهُمْ مُصِيبَةٌ. Congratulations to those who have sabr, who persevere and are patient, because when calamity hits them, they say, we belong to Allah. That's calamity that hits them. But when people are doing wrong, then sabr is used when you actually have the power to exact revenge. You have the power. You're not in a position of weakness. So that's the wrong counsel to give to somebody and say, well, you know what, you need to continue to be oppressed because you should have sabr. Notice also, I'll give you a scenario. Some woman is being oppressed by her in-laws or her husband. She's wronged by her husband over and over again. He beats her, does whatever. And she goes and seeks counsel and they tell her what? You should have what? Sabr. And they say, well, we just did tawasi bil sabr. And I would say, hold on a second. Doesn't tawasi bil haqq come first? You know what tawasaw bil haqq? What tawasaw bil sabr? So wait, when you counseled her, did you counsel her as to what her rights are? And what their rights are? Or did you skip that part and go straight to what? There's an order here, isn't there? That wasn't followed. We misuse terminology from the Quran. And we end up creating abuse. We end up creating wrong. These things are in order for a reason. Anyway, looking at the word sabr, which is an incredible word. As-sabru naqidul jaz'. First of all, sabr is the opposite of losing hope and giving up. ومن استعماله اللغوي في الحسيات عصارة شجر مر واللبن إذا اشتدت حموضته إلى المرارة والحجارة الغليظة المجتمعة. The word sabr was used. Remember I told you words that are abstract, like patience is an abstract thing, but the Arabs would give it like an actual image, like material imagery. The imagery they use is the sap of a tree that's bitter, that gets so bad it can't even be tasted. It's barely something you can taste or tolerate the taste of. Bitterness is part of its fundamental meanings. When milk goes bad and you can't tolerate the taste of it anymore, like it's beyond patawadud, that's actually also called usara. Or actually sabr, one of the words in the original sense. It's also used for rocks, tough rocks that are all gathered together that you can't break apart. Intensity is actually the common thread, or bitterness, toughness. Sabr is actually not just you're going through tough times. The person of sabr is described as someone who becomes tough. It's you yourself become tough. It's as though you're being squeezed, you're being put to the test. وبملحظ من الشدة والمرارة قيل للحر الشديدة والداهية صبور. In old Arabic, when there was a really hot day and people were like burning to death, they would call it, oh my God, the mother of sabur. That's what they call that day, because of its bitterness and its intensity. Similarly, if it was a freezing cold day, shiddatul bard as-sabara. Freezing cold day is called sabara, from the same word sabr. Sabr al-habs. Sabr is also used for imprisonment. Bad situation, a bitter situation. And one of the most fascinating was, وَالْقَتْلُ صَبْرًا أَنْ يُحْبَسَ الْمَرْءُ وَيُرْمَى حَتَّى يَمُوتِ. They say somebody died out of sabr is when they were put inside of a cage or a prison cell and then they were stoned to death. And they died out of sabr, meaning bitterness, pain, difficulty. That's actually a death of sabr. So, كثر استعماله في الصبر على الشدائد والمكاره. It's used in very bad and very disliked kinds of situations. وتواصوا بالصبر is Allah counseling us to become tough because things are not going to be easy. In other words, it's a continuation of haqq. We counsel one another. Look, I'm not saying your situation isn't bad. I acknowledge how bitter it is. I acknowledge how nasty your situation is. I sympathize and empathize with the horrible nature of it. And the only way you're going to get past it is, first of all, you acknowledge that reality, which was already captured in haqq, and now you get tough. And I'm going to help you get stronger as you help me get stronger. That's the only way we're going to get out of this. How many times have you, you guys don't watch movies, so I don't know if I can give you movie examples because you're too religious, but still, like you'll have maybe one day, when shaitan really gets to you, a movie where people are stranded on an island, or there's a plane crash, or they're the only two people left at sea or somewhere, and look, we're going to die here unless we get tough. There's no way for us to survive this unless we develop some sort of grit. The word is grit. And we're going to have to do things we've never done before. And it's only through our sabr that we're not going to die a terrible death. And as soon as you're about to give up and you can't do anymore, the other one says, come on, get up. They're doing tawasi bis sabr. That's tawasi bis sabr. I can't give up. It's too hard. No, it's not. Come on, you got this. Okay. And then the tables turn and the other one's dying and it's like, you told me to get up. You can't give up on me now. And they, That's the idea. Actually, tawasi bil haqq and tawasi bil sabr. By the time you get to tawasi bil sabr, it's not only that you're giving soft counsel and you're strengthening somebody, but you're actually building grit in someone. You're building strength in someone. And you're not hiding, you never make light of the fact that they're in a difficult circumstance. You acknowledge that their situation requires sabr, which means they are in a very bitter, despised, despicable, terrible situation. And those situations can be physically painful, or they can be emotionally painful, they can be financially painful. There are all kinds of pain. Just because you can't acknowledge or you haven't experienced one of those kinds of pain doesn't mean you get to undermine it. You don't get to tell somebody who just lost a child, just have sabr. Allah will give, wait, hold on a second. If you haven't experienced that, then you don't get to talk like that. Tawasi bis sabr. Remember, wasiyah is loving counsel. What can I do to help you get stronger? The misuse of this word is one of the great tragedies of our culture. The misuse of, we lack so much empathy when we tell people to have sabr. We have no acknowledgement of their pain when we tell them to have sabr. And I gave khutbah about this not too long ago, even somebody crying. Something simple as somebody crying. We say this person has no sabr. Honestly, Yaqub alayhi salam cried to the point where he couldn't see anymore. وَبْيَضَّتْ عَيْنَاهُ. And this is the Prophet who his mouth says, فَصَبْرٌ جَمِيلٌ وَاللَّهُ الْمُسْتَعَانَ عَلَى مَا تَصِفُونَ. Patience is beautiful. That's what he said. He's the Prophet of patience in the Quran. And he was crying. He had the right to cry. That's not an evidence that you don't have sabr. There's an empathy that has to be exhibited when we do tawasi bis sabr. There's an acknowledgement of somebody else's difficulty. And you have to allow people to grow little by little by little. Al-Bahr al-Muhit uses the word describing at-tawasi bis-sabr. The commentary says, أن التواصي بالصبر يدخل فيه حمل النفس على مشقة التكليف في القيام بما يجب واجتناب بما يحرم. So it's beyond difficulty, but also what tawasaw bis-sabr means, that it includes all the burdens Allah put on us, like we have to carry on doing the things Allah told us to do, and we have to carry on avoiding the things Allah prohibited us from doing. That also requires grit. It requires strength. And sometimes it's very bitter to hold on to what Allah says. Like spirituality and obeying Allah is supposed to be a sweet thing, but it doesn't always feel sweet. Staying away from the haram thing is supposed to be something that increases your iman, but that doesn't mean it's easy to fight the temptation or fight the pull of the haram. That requires sabr. That requires a strength, inner strength from ourselves. And maybe we don't possess that strength ourselves, which is why we need one another to strengthen one another. وَتَوَاصَوْا بِالصَّبْرِ, to one another. أَمَّا الصَّبْرُ فَمَا مِنْ أُمَّةٍ اسْتَفَاهَ. This is Hamiduddin Farahi talking. He says, أَمَّا الصَّبْرُ فَمَا مِنْ أُمَّةٍ اسْتَفَاهَ اللَّهُ لِحَمْلِ كِتَابِهِ إِلَّا وَقَدْ امْتَحَنَهَا بِالصَّبْرِ. He says, there was never a nation that ever Allah picked to give them, to honor them with a book. And what greater book than Quran? That except if Allah would honor a nation with a book, He would test its members with sabr. Tough trials. كما أن الباني يلتمس أساسا صلبا لجسر عظيم أو قصر رفيع. Just like a builder has a tough, deep foundation, a hard foundation before he builds a tower or a palace. This great thing has to be built, its foundation has to be tough. And that toughness will be built by way of sabr. فيكون أول أمر الأمة امتحانا وبلاء حتى إذا صبروا بعد الزلازل والشدائد استحقوا أمانة ربهم. It's only after this nation was tested and tried with so many earthquake after earthquake, so many calamity after calamity, that's when Allah sees that they deserve to carry the great trust that Allah has given them His book. So now, we've got to tawasi bis sabr. And by the time you get to tawasi bis sabr, you're literally, you have to imagine that, we use the word illa in the beginning of the surah, or in the beginning of our last discussion. This group of people are a minority. They're very, very few. And everybody else is actually pulling them the other way. One of the analogies you can think of, what people that carry الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَعَمِلُوا الصَّالِحَاتِ وَتَوَاصَوْا بِالْحَقِّ وَتَوَاصَوْا بِالصَّبْرِ, is people that are trying to swim upstream. The wave, the current is always against them. And there are people that are just swimming downstream. And they're saying, this is so much easier this way. And they're pulling up. And as they are pulling up, they're losing strength. And as they lose strength, they need someone else to pull them sometimes. And the one pulling them will get exhausted while you regain your strength. And they start slipping. And what must you do? It's your turn to pull them now. You must rely on one another to keep on chugging away. It has to be a mutual thing. And this is, by the time you get to وَتَوَاصَوْا بِالصَّبْرِ, this is actually a very close bonded people. People can share a belief. الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا. That doesn't mean they know each other. People can do good deeds. All of us can do charity. Does that mean we're close to one another? No. People can give each other counsel every once in a while. Does that mean they're bonded together? To an extent, but not so much. By the time you get to a phase where people are each other's strength, people pick each other up when one gives up, ضد الجزع. People strengthen one another. People notice somebody slipping and they say, come. I got you. What we do in the Ummah is when someone slips, we kick them harder. Good, I see you going down. Let me make sure you do. You know. But when you get to that point, where you are each other's help, you're each other's support, you're each other's anchor, your lifeline, by that time there's a relationship of mutual love and care. The ummah is bonded. That's فَأَلَّفَ بَيْنَ قُلُوبِكُمْ فَأَصْبَحْتُمْ بِنِعْمَتِهِ إِخْوَانًا. Then He put a love between your hearts. And only by His blessing you became brethren. You became a brotherhood because of that. By the time you get to if we live up to this, then we are a united ummah that just absolutely loves one another. That is very interested in saving and helping one another, realizing that all of us are subject to fatigue and all of us may slip at one point or another, and the others must help pull. We got to keep going. We're not there yet. But there's a difference between a community and a cult. And a healthy community, which is what this description is. A community takes its members who falter and supports them so they can become strong again. A cult wants everybody to be the same. And as the moment somebody is less than perfect, they say, you're out of it. You're out of here. You don't belong in our cult anymore. You don't fit. Because we have this image of everybody needs to be perfect. So long as you're not perfect, you're gone. Tawasaw bis-sabr necessarily means that there are people that are going to need help from others. They're going to need help from others. Now I'm going to describe another way of looking at these ayat. Now we're at the end of this discussion. We're wrapping everything up. And I'm going to show you the logical flow between الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَعَمِلُوا الصَّالِحَاتِ. Well, actually no, وَتَوَاصَوْا بِالْحَقِّ and وَتَوَاصَوْا بِالصَّبْرِ. These two, what the logical connection between these two, and why is the word tawasaw mentioned twice? Because you could say وَتَوَاصَوْا بِالْحَقِّ وَالصَّبْرِ. But Allah says وَتَوَاصَوْا بِالْحَقِّ وَتَوَاصَوْا بِالصَّبْرِ. And one of its implications is as follows. I'll give you a scenario. First, just understand the relationship between haqq and sabr. Then we'll talk about the repeat of tawasi. Just haqq and sabr for now. You're going down the street and you see a bunch of kids playing baseball in the street. And they hit the ball and it's hitting a bunch of cars. Right? This is in the Bronx, or this is in Queens, and there's a bunch of kids and there's no cops around, and a couple of cars are being hit. Some windshields are also being cracked. And these kids are playing. And you're just walking to your apartment, minding your own business. A thought comes to your mind. Maybe I should tell these kids that they shouldn't be doing this. This is a bad idea. Maybe they shouldn't be destroying other people's property. I should just say something to them. But then another thought crosses your mind. What's that thought? They have a baseball bat. And I'll be the ball if they don't like what I have to say. You're going to have some kind of grit to have the courage to go and speak the truth. That truth, once you speak it, you might be placed in a situation where your sabr is tested. Once you do tawasi bil haqq, somebody's not going to like what you had to say, no matter how nice you were. And then they're going to come at you. And when they come at you, what are you going to need? Sabr, or run. You know, you're counseling somebody lovingly, telling them kindly, listen, the way you're treating this daughter of yours, the way you're treating this wife or this husband, the way you're treating your daughter-in-law, son-in-law, whatever. You're telling somebody in the family that what you're doing is wrong. This isn't right. Or you borrowed this money, you never gave it back, this is wrong. or you lied, you did this is wrong. You should just fix it. Just fix it. And they say, oh, you're going to tell me? And then they destroy you. They humiliate you. They rip you to shreds. What do you need at that point? You need sabr. Haqq cannot live if you don't have the strength found in sabr. And the only time you are committed to haqq is because the first two now. If you have iman, which means you believe in the truth, you believe in the truth, and you live by the truth yourself. What part of this ayah is you live by the truth yourself? الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَعَمِلُوا الصَّالِحَاتِ. When you live by the truth yourself, now you personally represent a commitment to the truth. Now you're in a position to say something about the truth. And when you do, things are going to come your way. You're going to get hit hard. And when you're hit hard, you might say, you know what, this truth business, I don't know what I just stepped into, I will never open my mouth again, I'm done. I'm going to mind my own business. I'll just be الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَعَمِلُوا الصَّالِحَاتِ. I'm done. The rest of the surah is for somebody else. This is me, I'm okay here. Because this whole tawasi bil haqq business, وَتَوَاصَوْا بِالْحَقِّ, the moment I did it, man, did it test my sabr. I'm not about that. I'm done. No, thank you. You understand what I'm saying? The Sahaba, or the Prophets, their job is very different from a speaker or a scholar or a khatib. A khatib gets up there, gives a khutbah, people come shake their hands, say, Jazakallahu khairan, make dua for me, here's my child, put your hand over their head, do this stuff. When the Prophet spoke, what did people do? They spit at them. استغشوا ثيابهم أصروا واستكبروا استكبارا. They were arrogant. People pulled their clothes in like they're looking at someone disgusting. They mocked them. Was dujir, he was scolded. They were almost killed. This is what prophets went through. And they don't have a choice. They have iman, they have a'mal salihah, but they have to do tawasi bil haqq. And as soon as they do tawasi bil haqq, what is tested? Their patience is tested. So Allah keeps telling His prophets, وَاصْبِرْ كَمَا صَبَرَ أُولُو الْعَزْمِ مِنَ الرُّسُلِ. Be patient, be patient, be patient. وَاسْتَقِمْ كَمَا أُمِرْتَ. Stay firm, be patient, be patient. All of those prophets and all of their stories at the end of the day go back to sabr. Sabr. That's their legacy. And that's actually what's been passed down to us. Istawasi bil haqq will necessarily test your sabr. You will notice also in many stories of the prophets, the people who tested their patience the most were their own family. In many, many stories, Ibrahim alayhi salam, our own messengers alayhi salam, Yusuf alayhi salam, Yaqub alayhi salam, you have Nuh alayhi salam, Lut alayhi salam. Over and over, what do you find? The toughest trials come from where? Your family. And people say, I don't know, why did I have to be in this family? They're not like me. They hate me. And if you have that problem, Ibrahim alayhi salam could have asked for, different choice of parent. Allah put us in those families for a reason, because they are going to be our trial of tawasi bil haqq and tawasi bil sabr. Do you understand the basic logical connection between these four? Okay. Now, another point of view. The repeat of the word tawasi could also mean that it's two different groups of people. How so? One group of people you try to tell the truth to, and they don't really like it. But you try to keep it mutual. Look, if there's anything you'd like to tell me, I'm all ears also. But then just because you're in this group of people, maybe family, they may not be your source of strength. Maybe family is very averse to you. Maybe you have to have another group of people that's your source of strength. They're your tawasi bis sabr. Somebody else. وَالَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَعَمِلُوا الصَّالِحَاتِ لَنُدْخِلَنَّهُمْ فِي الصَّالِحِينَ. Allah says, those who believe and do good things, we will enter them into a new company of righteous people. In other words, it may be some companions got ostracized by their own families. They tried to do tawasi bil haqq, a mutual counsel to the truth. They tried to do that to the best of their ability. It was met with hatred, animosity, mockery. They were met with all of these things, and they decided to recede. But then they found another support group, which was a support group of like-minded believers who have their own challenges, وَتَوَاصَوْا بِالصَّبْرِ, and they're refueled in that company. That may happen. Because when you do make changes like that, and when you start speaking the truth, people that used to like you will no longer like you. Because you're saying harsh realities they don't want to hear, so you're no longer friends like you used to be. You're going to lose your social circle when you become people of الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَعَمِلُوا الصَّالِحَاتِ وَتَوَاصَوْا بِالْحَقِّ وَتَوَاصَوْا بِالصَّبْرِ. That's a natural consequence of it. And as that happens, you'll feel isolated. Where are you supposed to find support and comfort now? And that's when Allah grants you a new kind of company. Those are the people of Quran. Those are the people that, inshallah ta'ala, all of us are able to find that can become each other's strength. And that's where tawasaw bis sabr comes from. Hopefully that's also understandable. That the repeat of the word may also be that they counsel one another in two separate occasions to find that kind of comfort. And may Allah Azza wa Jal grant all of us a good comfort and support group. I've already mentioned in passing that sabr, it's the tawasaw bis sabr isn't just what they counsel each other to, but it's also how they counsel. Just like with al-haq was what and how, with the sabr it's also what and how. What are they counseling to? Patience, perseverance, but understand what I tried to highlight, that doesn't mean you're asking people to passively accept injustice. That's not sabr. That's not sabr. Sabr is after tawasi bil haqq. You speak about justice first. Then you're persevering because you spoke about justice. Not when you stayed silent. But also it suggests, tawasi bil haqq, bil sabr suggests that when you give counsel, you're patient with people. That's a hal also. In other words, when you're giving advice or you're receiving advice, sometimes giving advice can be very difficult. People don't want to hear what you have to say. You can get offended. They didn't even listen to me. They just walked away. I wasn't even halfway done with my sentence. You should have seen the look on their face. And they may do things that very much anger you. And you need to show sabr. Maybe this is not a good time. Even Luqman, who's quoted in the Quran, radiallahu anhu, who's giving advice to his son, Allah says, وَإِذْ قَالَ لُقْمَانُ لِابْنِهِ وَهُوَ يَعِظُهُ. إِذْ and huwa ya'iduhu suggests Luqman even found a really appropriate time to catch his young son to give him advice. It wasn't just, son, come here, let me give you advice. It was the right moment, right occasion, where he found an opportunity to slip in some advice. And that requires patience, right? Because sometimes you try to give advice, like the Prophet ﷺ tried to give da'wah at first, at a dinner, and people just laughed him off and ate and left. Nobody listened. That can happen. We can't be the kinds of people that say, man, I even quoted the hadith and they just walked away. They didn't even listen. SubhanAllah, the word of the Prophet ﷺ, sahih. Really? Did the Prophets do that? Like, I just quoted Quran, you're going to walk away? Ya Allah, get them. 2/3 of the Quran came to stubborn people who weren't ready to listen. It requires sabr. Allah was sabir with them. Allah was sabur with them. If Allah wanted to punish, they denied one ayah of the Quran, they should have been punished. They mocked Allah's messenger, they should have been punished. Allah was patient with them. Ar-Rahman allam al-Quran. He was so loving to them, so merciful to them in the way He taught the Quran. We have to embody that. We have to give counsel patiently. Also means we have to receive counsel patiently. Sometimes somebody is giving us the wrong counsel. And something inside you, a bug inside you says, man, I'm going to fix you right now. Actually, that's not what it is. Let me tell you what it is. I even studied Arabic for 2 weeks. So let me tell you what's up. Or let me send you this quote. Or let me counter you with this, that, or the other. Maybe sometimes you let people be. You just let them run their mouth. It's okay. And you just have to wasi bil sabr. Let them do it. And sometimes they have the right, maybe 99% of what they said is absolutely wrong, but there's 1% truth in it. Our tendency is to focus on the what? Can you believe what they said? This, and this, and this, and all of that's wrong. What are we not going to bring up? The 1% that actually hits the conscience. Tawasi bil haqq and tawasi bil sabr means, okay, much of what you said is wrong, but I'm not going to say that because I'm going to be patient. But the 1% that is true, I'll take into consideration. But you don't say that. That's inside of you. That's happening inside of you. And that's required of us. We have to be honest with ourselves. وَلَوْ عَلَىٰ أَنفُسِكُمْ. Stand up for justice, even if it means to stand up against yourself. Now, last part. الْحَقُّ شَدِيدُ الْبَطْشِ وَالصَّبْرُ كَالْحُلْمِ. They say, some ulama have commented in the past, that when he says they counsel to the truth because the truth is harsh, Allah then coupled it with, they counsel the perseverance because perseverance is soft. Patience is soft. So there's a balance between harshness and softness in tawasi bil haqq and tawasi bil sabr. Ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah said that people leave faith or can't come to faith for 2 reasons. Either they have doubts, or they're too tempted by other things. Like, I don't have any doubts. I know it's the truth, but man, I don't want to change my ways. I'm too tempted to stay my course the way I am. And he says, when he says tawasaw bil haqq, when they counsel each other to the truth with evidence and reason and with proper argument removes doubts. And counseling people to become stronger and persevere and have grit will help them fight against their temptations. So those are two battlefronts that humanity will always have, and both those battlefronts are confronted with tawasaw bil haqq and tawasaw bil sabr. Then, is there anything after tawasaw bil sabr? Not in this surah. You have إِلَّا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَعَمِلُوا الصَّالِحَاتِ وَتَوَاصَوْا بِالْحَقِّ وَتَوَاصَوْا بِالصَّبْرِ. And by the time you get to tawasaw bil sabr, people have really tested your patience, man. Which means you might develop a very bitter attitude towards people. Like, they don't even listen. People do. Like, I'm reminded of Musa alayhi salam so much. I know, I have a Musa alayhi salam bias, I know. But he helped these people cross the water. He challenged the Pharaoh years and helped these people cross the water. And then they, after crossing the water, start worshipping the statue of a golden calf. And they say, well, you left for too long. You went to the mountain, you left for too long, so what are we supposed to do, worship nothing? And he's just looking at them like, and then he says, you need to repent. God has told you to slaughter a cow. Why slaughter a cow? Because they worshipped a cow. Slaughter it, so the love of it is removed from you. They're like, what kind of cow? What color? Young or old? We're confused. إِنَّ الْبَقَرَةَ تَشَابَهَ عَلَيْنَا. If that wasn't enough, eventually they're wandering in the desert. Allah gave them cloud, manna, salwa. They're surviving where everybody should have died. They're surviving. Allah says there's a town there, there's oppressive people there. You're going to battle that town and you're going to liberate that town. And they say to Musa alayhi salam, فَذْهَبْ أَنْتَ وَرَبُّكَ فَقَاتِلَا إِنَّا هَاهُنَا قَاعِدُونَ. You go and your God go fight, we're sitting here, okay? When you win, let us know. Musa alayhi salam should have a lot of bitterness. Man, what I do for these people and what they've done to me. And he did by the end. But we're not Musa alayhi salam. We can't be people that after a while become bitter. You know, some people that are in the space of giving da'wah, teaching, you'll find them in their talks and their discourse saying, Muslims today, subhanallah, what they do, and they're just bashing Muslims. How terrible Muslims are. They've developed a bitterness. There's actually something beyond what tawasaw bis sabr. فَلَا اقْتَحَمَ الْعَقَبَةَ وَمَا أَدْرَاكَ مَا الْعَقَبَةُ فَكُّ رَقَبَةٍ أَوْ إِطْعَامٌ فِي يَوْمٍ ذِي مَسْغَبَةٍ يَتِيمًا ذَا مَقْرَبَةٍ أَوْ مِسْكِينًا ذَا مَتْرَبَةٍ ثُمَّ كَانَ مِنَ الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَتَوَاصَوْا بِالصَّبْرِ, which is where this ends. وَتَوَاصَوْا بِالصَّبْرِ وَتَوَاصَوْا بِالْمَرْحَمَةِ. They counseled one another to patience, and they also counseled one another to retain love, care, and mercy. That's actually all the way at the end. It should be a natural consequence. If truly sabr was there, then your love and care for people would not go away. I'm inspired by the example of Nuh alayhi salam, who after 9 centuries still turns to his people and says, not you vile, filthy, disbelieving bunch of rebels. He says, Ya qawmi, my people, my people, my people. It's incredible. He'll turn to them and speak to them. Ya qawmi inni lakum minhu nadhirun mubin. How are you talking like this after all this time? My people, I'm just here to warn you. Just to warn you. The love of humanity didn't go away from him, even though he only experienced bitterness from them. They only tested his patience. How are you going to develop that? How are you and I going to hold on to that? We cannot hold on to that if we don't have a support group. That's why the word tawasaw is used. You can't keep, if you were on your own, if you were a loner, you'd develop bitterness. And if you're part of a group that encourages bitterness, that encourages hatred, that encourages intolerance, that is condescending, then they don't understand Surah Al Asr. And maybe some of those groups consider themselves very Islamic, but they don't live up to tawasi bil sabr and tawasi bil marhama. They don't. Farahi says about tawasi bil sabr and tawasi bil marhama, he says, إِنَّمَا صِنْوَانٌ بَلْ ثَنَيَا لِحَبْلٍ وَاحِدٍ. These are twins. Actually, they're two ends of the same rope. They're inseparable. Sabr and love, sabr and care are inseparable. Just like a mother can't be patient with her child unless she has what? It's because she has the kind of love that she has. You watch some other kid behave that way in front of the same lady. It ain't the same. Her sabr comes from her love, from her rahmah. Those two things are inseparable. Anyhow, I have, man, inshallah, I'll take the entire time. Sorry, I got to do this. Okay. A quick comment about the previous surah and this one. These are my concluding notes. The surah was takathur, about wealth and our obsession with more. And this surah is about the shortage of time and our loss. So you can already say, well, gain of wealth and loss of humanity are contrasted with one another. But there's an ayah that Hamiduddin Farahi sees, an ayah from Surah Al Munafiqun that ties both of these together. Those of you who believe, don't allow your monies and your kids to take you away from Allah's remembrance, and whoever does so are the ultimate losers. Khusr again. And he says, Allah says, and spend out of what we've provided you before death comes to any one of you, and you will say, Master, how come you just didn't give me some extra time, just a little bit more of an extended deadline? I'll give charity and I'll become from those who tell the truth. Why does he see a connection here? First of all, you refuse to spend because you're too greedy. And then you're only going to realize it when your time has already run out, which is actually takathur and asr. Right? So he sees that one ayah as kind of a hint at the relationship between takathur and asr, and that's the last ayah of Surah Al Munafiqun. An interesting comment about this surah also is it's the index of the entire Quran. Every subject of the Quran comes back to something in Surah Al Asr. Every subject. In the Quran, either you're learning about nations of the past, aren't you? Good or bad, but you're learning about nations of the past. All of that is encapsulated in one word in the surah, Wal Asr. Time that's already gone is witness. All of those stories are witness. Much of the Quran that depicts the events of the past is all summed up in that one word, Wal Asr. Allah will describe in all over the Quran things people do that have destroyed this life and the next. Hypocrisy, disbelief, ingratitude, denial, opposing messengers. There's so many things mentioned, and all of those are manifestations of one thing. Innal insana lafi khusr. Either in dunya or on Judgment Day or in the Akhirah, but innal insana lafi khusr. Then you find in the Quran, who do we believe in? Why do we believe in Him? We believe in Allah, we believe in the angels, we believe in the books, we believe in the prophets. And that's all of that is summarized in this surah in one place. إِلَّا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا. Quran will tell us about what to do as an individual, what to do as a family, what to do as a community, what good deeds to do as an ummah. All of that in one phrase, which is what? وَعَمِلُوا الصَّالِحَاتِ. The prophets ﷺ and the believers invited people to the truth, gave counsel, and there are places in Quran where believers are receiving counsel from one another, like the gardeners, in Surah Al-Kahf and other places. Dialogue is taking place. The truth is being shared, and it's sometimes being opposed. And what is all of that boiled down to? Either tawasi bil haqq or tawasi bil sabr. And the extreme of tawasi bil sabr is people ready to fight you. And so you have, battles. That's part of tawasi bil sabr. Every subject of the Quran actually comes back to one of the pillars inside Surah Al Asr. It's an index of the entire Quran in one place. There's not a subject you can find in the Quran that doesn't go back to one of these. SubhanAllah. When I call it the seed, to which the rest of the Quran is the blossom, I say it for that reason. Okay? Now, two things left, and I'm done. And both of them should take less than 15 minutes, inshallah, together. The first of those things is, I told you the first half of this surah is for yourself, with the exception at the end. الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَعَمِلُوا الصَّالِحَاتِ. Iman and deeds are for myself. And tawasi bil haqq and tawasi bil sabr, what we spend time trying to understand today, is for others. So it's like the Quran wants part of my attention on myself and part of my attention on others. But notice, if somebody was always doing Islamic activities like da'wah programs or MSA programs or putting a convention together or handing out pamphlets, all of their focus is towards themselves or others. When their focus is always towards others, you can start becoming less and less spiritually strong because your concern is always others and never yourself. And then somebody takes the other extreme and says, I don't want to worry about anybody else. My own iman is so weak. I'm just going to pray. I'm just going to recite Quran. I'm just going to do dhikr. I'm just going to memorize. I'm just going to do, umrah and multiple hajj or whatever. But I don't want to talk to anybody. I don't want to deal with any of that stuff because I just want to save myself. Some people become people of concern for others, and the opposite extreme, they only become concerned for themselves. What does the surah do? Half of it for you, half of it for others, and they're inseparable. They're inseparable. But the problem is, even if you say theoretically they're inseparable, it's not really possible to keep a perfect balance. You're going to lean more this way or that way. How do you make sure, for example, if you're doing a lot of talking and speaking and teaching and da'wah and towards others, how are you supposed to maintain spiritual balance yourself? How do you do that? The beauty of this surah is it actually has the answer within it. Allah didn't just say iman and a'mal salihah are for yourself and tawasi bil haqq and tawasi bil sabr are for others. Actually, by using the word tawasaw, He basically said even when you're pointing towards others, you're opening the door always for them to point to you. You find yourself in company who can benefit from you, and you can constantly benefit from them. And when you maintain that, then all four stay in place. They become a source for your iman also. They become a source for your a'mal salihah also. That balance is maintained. You don't have to find an answer to this problem somewhere else. It's actually inside of the surah itself that Allah Azza wa Jal protected the spiritual integrity of what you can call the activist. How will the activist not lose sight? If they have the right surrounding, then they're not going to become spiritually devoid themselves while giving other people light. And so I want to share with you finally something that was a young man, may Allah reward him, Irfan from Indonesia. I met him once actually, years later. He took my podcast from Surah Al Asr so many years ago, and part of it I was illustrating the imagery of Surah Al Asr, and he turned it into this animated thing about Surah Al Asr. And I had no idea who he was or that he did that. And I somehow connected with him, and then I ended up meeting him when I was in Singapore. And so it's a really beautiful effort. But I want to walk you through that imagery one more time. Those of you that have seen it before, it's okay. You'll get over it. But I think it's important to really tie everything together at the end to understand that imagery, because I think it really sends home the message of Surah Al Asr. So you're to imagine yourself drowning and unconscious. Okay? You don't know, you're passed out. That means you don't have a lot of time left. If you don't wake up, then you're done. The first requirement that you must fulfill in order to have any chance of survival is that you need to wake up. Isn't it? The surah is saying you are drowning in loss. The surah begins with the oath you're running out of time. Right? And the first condition it says you have to save yourself is what? To believe. And believing is like seeing reality for what it actually is. To wake up. Actually, Allah did not say believe in Allah, the messengers, the books, whatever. And all of that's true. But in the context of this surah, you must first believe that you don't have a lot of time left and that you are in fact in loss. If you don't believe that, you're not going to feel any sense of urgency. Okay, now the scenario is Iman is there, meaning you actually wake up and you don't think that this is a nightmare. You realize this is actually happening. I'm actually drowning. Oh God, how long have I been down here? I don't have many breaths left. I need to do something. I need to literally do something. What's the Arabic word for doing? Amal. وَعَمِلُوا الصَّالِحَاتِ. Now what do I have to do? There's two things I can do. I don't know how to swim, so I'm going to do the chicken dance or whatever it is that I do to start making movements. Either I'm heading towards the surface with my movements, or I'm heading down. And I need to realize I need to make the kinds of movements that are heading me upwards. يَرْفَعِ اللَّهُ الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَالَّذِينَ عَمِلُوا أُوتُوا الْعِلْمَ مِنْكُمْ دَرَجَاتٍ. Allah elevates those who believe by way of their deeds. now you realize some deeds are taking me down and some actions are taking me up. I'm going to start focusing my energy on the efforts that take me up. And by the way, this is there to save who? This is there to save yourself. This is sulh of you. You're fixing yourself. You're trying to save yourself from drowning. So you start moving upwards. You only made a little bit of progress and you notice that your foot is stuck to your cousin who's sleeping like you were. And you're trying to go up, but you can't because his weight is tied to you. What do you got to do to save yourself? You got to wake him up. And he pushes your arm away and says, blah, 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 leave me alone. You can find suit yourself. I never liked you anyway. I like my mother's side cousins better. No. If you give up on him, who have you given up on? Yourself. You got to keep going at it and at it. Bro, wake up, wake up. And he's dreaming and he's got this great dream where he's driving a Ferrari and he's having a good old time. He's one of those car commercials and he's happy. And every time you wake him up, he sees the nightmare of the drowning and he says, I want to go back to sleep. Put me back in the matrix. He doesn't want to listen to you. But you don't have a choice. You do everything you can to wake this person up. And as they wake up and realize the seriousness of reality, now there's two of you swimming upwards. Which means as your efforts to wake him up exhausted you. And he just freshly woke up. So as he's going up and you're getting tired, what's he doing? He's pulling you up, and then he realizes he's chained to his cousin or his uncle. Now the two of you get together and wake the uncle up. And as you're waking him up, your efforts are better because now there's how many? Two of you. And the three of you now go up. And this is going to require you, none of you can give up. And by the way, not giving up and persevering is sabr. As any one of you says, I'm running out of breath, I can't do this anymore. Yes, you can. You can. We all can. We're going to need to. We're going to have to. We don't have a choice. وَتَوَاصَوْا بِالصَّبْرِ. And this, pulling ourselves out of loss, that's the sequence of Surah Al Asr. وَالْعَصْرِ إِنَّ الْإِنسَانَ لَفِي خُسْرٍ إِلَّا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَعَمِلُوا الصَّالِحَاتِ وَتَوَاصَوْا بِالْحَقِّ وَتَوَاصَوْا بِالصَّبْرِ. That's supposed to be the struggle of our entire life. If we don't see the sense of urgency of that struggle, we don't identify within our life where we are lacking, we can come conveniently, you can listen to all of this, I can listen to all of this, we can conveniently go back to sleep, and it's a pretty good dream. Things are fine. It's like if I knew the contents of Surah Al Asr and I didn't know them, nothing changed. That means that this was just a dream, you didn't really see it. This is like the statement of Ali radiallahu anhu, "An-nasu niyam." People are asleep. It's Judgment Day when they wake up. Literally what Quran describes, "Man ba'athana min marqadina." Who woke us up from our sleep? Who woke us up from our sleep? This is just a play. The reality check is very, very harsh. It's very hard. But this is the road Allah has given us. And you and I have to identify in our life who it is that is going to be our support. Who it is that we need to give counsel of truth to. Who it is that, and who are we, and how willing are we to receive counsel of truth ourselves. We're going to have to become honest with ourselves, open with ourselves. I can't do that for you and you can't do that for me. That's a personal exercise. But may Allah Azza wa Jal give us the ability to live up to the profound teachings of Surah Al Asr. And may Allah Azza wa Jal make us of those who when they recite this surah, their entire, the view of their life flashes before them. What is it that we're here for? And that it prepares us to stand before Allah Azza wa Jal in a way that will not be disappointing to any of us. Barakallahu li wa lakum fil Qur'an al-Hakim. ونفعني وإياكم بالآيات والذكر الحكيم والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله تعالى وبركاته.